The river was dry, but it still controlled movement. In the wet months, water cut a clean channel through the valley, dragging branches and stones downstream and leaving the banks steep and undercut. In the dry months, the water disappeared, but the shape remained, a long trench with walls of packed earth and exposed roots. Animals used it because it was cooler down there, because it hid them from wind and eyes, because it offered a straight line through thorn scrub that would otherwise tear skin and slow legs. People used it too, not openly, not proudly, but the same way people used any shortcut once they realized it worked, quietly, often, and until it became habit. Locals called it the dry river wall, the sharp edge where the bank rose from the sandy bed, tall enough to conceal a man crouching. At night, when moonlight made open ground too honest, the wall turned into a moving shadow line. A leopard moved along that wall just before dawn. He travelled with the effortless precision of an animal built for silence. His paws barely pressed the sand. His shoulders rolled smoothly under spotted skin. His tail made small corrections behind him like a balancing rope. He wasn't large by lion standards, but he didn't need to be. Leopards didn't win by mass. They won by choosing where you couldn't see. He kept to the base of the bank, where the wall hid him from the slope above. He would pause, lift his head, and listen. When he moved again, it was in short bursts, stopping often, not because he was hesitant, but because he was reading the world. Above the wall, the village was still asleep. A few kilometers away, on the edge of the settlement, goats slept in a thorn pen. They were packed tight, the way animals did when the night belonged to predators. Their bodies made a small warmth in the cool air. Every so often a goat bleated softly in its sleep, a sound like a question no one answered. The pen belonged to a family who had built it the way everyone built pens: thorn branches, wire patched with old fencing, and faith. Faith did not stop leopards. The leopard stopped where the dry river wall curved closer to the village edge. His head lifted. He inhaled. Goat smell drifted downwind like smoke from a cooking fire. Not just goats, people too. Ash, sweat, the faint sour scent of fermented grain. The leopard knew this border. He had walked it before. He had taken chickens last year. He had taken a dog once, fast and clean, then disappeared before anyone saw him. But tonight he was not hunting small. Tonight he was hungry enough to risk a pen. He climbed. Leopards didn't scramble the way desperate animals did. They climbed like water rising, quiet, inevitable. He found footholds in roots, pressed into the bank, and lifted himself to the rim where thorn scrub began. From there he melted into the brush. Inside the village edge, a man named Kamau woke before sunrise. He was a herder, and he had learned to wake early, not because he liked mornings, but because morning was when you found what the night had taken. Kamau stepped outside and listened. No wind, no distant cattle bells, just a stillness that didn't feel clean. He walked toward the goat pen with a stick in his hand and the kind of caution that came from losing animals before. At the pen, he stopped. The goats were awake, pressed into the far corner, eyes wide. They weren't bleating loudly. They were holding themselves quiet in the way prey held quiet when danger was close. Kamau's stomach tightened. He scanned the thorn fence. Nothing obvious, no gap, no broken wire. Then he saw it, a small depression in the thorn top where something heavy had stepped and pushed down. He stepped closer. A low growl rolled out of the shadows inside the pen. Kamau froze. His eyes adjusted. In the half-light, he saw spots. The leopard was inside, not trapped, never trapped, just present, crouched low, body tense like a coiled spring. Kamau's mouth went dry. His first instinct was to shout, to throw a stone, to rush. That was what fear demanded, but fear made people do the wrong thing. Kamau backed away slowly and turned his head without turning his body. He called softly toward the nearest hut. "Mama Asha," he hissed. "Wake up. Quiet. Leopard." A door creaked. A woman's whisper answered. Where? In the pen, Kamau said, voice thin. Do not come close. A child began to cry inside the hut. Kamau clenched his jaw. Crying was a beacon. He raised his stick and struck the ground once, hard, loud, creating a sharp sound without moving toward the pen. The leopard's head lifted. Its eyes caught the faint light, reflecting pale gold. It didn't charge, not yet. Kamau struck the ground again, louder, and shouted this time, Hey! Out! The goats surged against each other, panicking in place. The leopard moved like a shadow unfolding. It leapt, one fluid motion, onto the thorn wall, using the compressed top as a springboard. Thorns scraped its belly, but it didn't slow. It dropped outside the pen and vanished into brush. Kamau exhaled like he'd been holding his breath for years. But then he looked back into the pen. One goat lay on its side, unmoving. Kamau stepped in cautiously and touched it. Dead. A clean bite mark on the throat. No tearing. No mess. A leopard kill. Mama Asha arrived, face pale, clutching a shawl around her shoulders. She stared at the goat, then at Kamau, then at the thorn fence. You shouted, she said, voice tight. If it had, I didn't run, Kamau replied. Mama Asha swallowed. Now it will come back. Kamau looked toward the dry river wall, where the bank dropped away into a shadow line that led straight out of the village like an open door. It already has a road, he said quietly. By midday, the goat carcass lay outside the pen under a sheet, flies already gathering. Kamau had dragged it out because leaving blood scent inside the pen was like leaving food on a table. Men gathered under the shade of an acacia near the village edge. Not a formal meeting, just a circle of people who all understood that one kill was never just one kill. A man named Seifu spoke first. We should hunt it. Another man shook his head. And miss, and wound it, and make it angry. Then it kills dogs, then it kills more goats. Mama Asha stood with her arms crossed. It will kill more goats anyway, she said. Kamau listened and didn't speak until the noise dipped. It used the dry river wall, he said. That's how it got close without being seen, Seifu scoffed. Leopards come from everywhere. Yes, Kamau said, but this one comes from there. The village elder, a thin man with a white beard, nodded slowly. The river is a path, he said. Always has been. Kamau pointed toward the far edge of the dry channel. We block it, he said. Not the whole river, just the access points near the pens. People murmured. Blocking meant work. Seifu frowned. And what? We build a wall for the wall? Kamau's eyes stayed steady. We make noise, he said. Lights. Tin. Dogs tied near the access point. Anything that makes the leopard choose easier hunting elsewhere. Mama Asha's voice was sharp. Easier hunting means someone else's goats. Kamau didn't deny it. Yes, he said. And that's why we call the Wildlife Office. We do this properly. The phrase properly made some men laugh, bitter, because properly meant paperwork and waiting and people who came late and wrote notes and left again. Still, Kamau made the call on a borrowed phone, walking until he caught enough signal. The wildlife unit promised to send someone. They didn't say when. That evening, Kamau and two young men dragged old corrugated metal sheets down to the dry river wall access point nearest the village edge. They wired the sheets to posts and hung them so they would rattle when touched. They tied empty plastic jugs filled with stones so they would clack in wind. It wasn't a fortress. It was a warning. The goats were brought into the pen early. Children were told not to wander. Dogs were kept close. Kamau counted his goats twice before dark. Once the way he always did, by habit, and again the way people did after a leopard visited, slowly, with dread, touching each animal like counting coins after a theft. Night came quiet. The moon rose thin. Wind died. Somewhere in the scrub, a leopard moved. Kamau lay awake listening for the sound that mattered, The metallic rattle at the wall, the bark of dogs, the sudden goat panic. Hours passed. Nothing. Near dawn, a faint clack came, one tin sheet tapping softly. Kamau sat up, heart hammering. Then another clack. Not wind. Too deliberate. Kamau rose without waking the whole house and stepped outside with his stick. He moved toward the pen, staying in the shadows. The goats were awake, pressed tight again. Kamau's skin prickled. He approached the access point by the river wall. The corrugated metal sheets hung still. The jugs didn't move. But the sand below showed fresh paw marks. Soft, round, no claw prints. Leopard. It hadn't touched the metal barrier. It had avoided it. Kamau's stomach dropped. The leopard had simply climbed higher along the bank, found a quieter entry, and come around the barrier. A smart animal. A patient animal. Kamau hurried to the goat pen. The thorn fence top looked disturbed again, pressed down, like last night, but in a different spot. He raised his stick and shouted before stepping close, "Hey! Out!" There was no growl this time, no flash of spots. Only goats surging against each other, bleating loudly now, panicking. Kamau's breath caught. He climbed onto the fence edge carefully and looked inside. 2 goats were down, one dead, one bleeding badly. The leopard had taken time, had killed, then tried to drag one, then abandoned it when noise rose. Kamau's hands shook. Mama Asha arrived, eyes wide, and made a small sound like she'd been punched. "You said the barrier," she started. Kamau swallowed hard. "It went around," he said. Sefu appeared with other men, faces tight. "We hunt it," he said again, louder. Kamau looked toward the dry river wall, the dark corridor that had offered the leopard clean approach twice now. "We do more than hunt," Kamau said. "We change the pen. We move the goats. We stop being predictable." Sefu's voice rose. "We can't move the whole village." Kamau stared at the dead goats. "Then the leopard will keep moving us," he said quietly. The wildlife officer arrived late that morning. Her name was Inspector Nia, and she stepped out of her vehicle with a notebook, a camera, and a calm expression that didn't match the anger in the village. She examined the fence, the tracks, the carcasses. "This leopard is using the riverbed as cover," she said. "It's learned your routine." Mama Asha snapped, "So what do we do? Ask it politely to leave?" Inspector Nia didn't flinch. "We make the goats harder than the leopard wants," she said, "and we make the river corridor less useful, at least here." Sefu crossed his arms. "Can you remove it?" Nia's eyes narrowed slightly. "We can set a cage trap," she said, "but it's not a guarantee. Leopards avoid traps. And if we remove one, another may take the space if food remains easy." Kamau felt something cold settle in his gut. The truth was that the village had become easy, and predators were honest about easy. The trap arrived at dusk, a heavy metal cage in the back of a truck, dragged down with effort and set near the dry river wall where the leopard's tracks were strongest. Inspector Nia chose the placement carefully. Not too close to the pen, too much human scent. Not too far, leopard might not bother. She baited it with goat offal from the carcass they couldn't save, tying the bait to the trigger plate inside. Kamau watched, jaw tight, hatred and helplessness mixing in his chest. Nia glanced at him. "This isn't revenge," she said. "It's management." Kamau's voice was rough. "It feels like loss," he replied. Nia nodded. "It is," she said, "but we can reduce the next one." They reinforced the goat pen that night, extra thorn branches, tighter wire, tin sheets hung on the fence top to rattle if stepped on. They moved the goats earlier. They kept dogs tethered closer. Kamau counted the goats again. Once at sunset. Once again after dark, by flashlight, moving slowly through the pen, touching backs and listening to breathing. He hated the second count. The second count meant fear had entered their routine. Night thickened. The dry river wall became a darker line under moonlight, a trench of shadow that could hide anything. Kamau stayed awake near the hut door with his stick, listening. From the riverbed direction, a faint sound came. Soft sand shift, almost nothing. Then silence. Then a different sound. A goat snorting in alarm. Kamau's heart slammed. He didn't rush out. Rushing out was how people got bitten when predators were cornered. He stepped forward and shouted, "Hey!" Dogs barked. Goats bleated. A human voice from another hut shouted too, joining the noise. The pen erupted in panic sounds. Then metal clanged. Not from the goat pen, from the trap. A heavy, unmistakable rattle of cage bars. Kamau froze, then ran toward the trap site with others, lanterns bobbing in the dark. Inspector Nya was already there, flashlight in hand. Inside the cage, a leopard paced in tight, furious circles, shoulders rolling, tail flicking like a whip. Its eyes burned gold in the beam, its lips pulled back in a silent snarl. Kamau felt a surge of something like triumph, then immediately something else, a cold respect. Up close, the leopard looked smaller than fear made it, but it also looked more real. Muscle under skin, scars on the flank, a torn ear edge, not a monster, not a symbol, an animal built for survival doing what survival demanded. Sefu stepped forward, raising a spear. Nya's voice snapped. "No!" Sefu glared. "It killed our goats." Nya didn't back down. "And if you stab it wrong, it thrashes and breaks teeth and claws and suffers," she said. "We do this clean." She gestured to her team to cover the cage with a tarp, reducing the leopard's stress. The leopard's pacing slowed slightly in darkness. Kamau stood near the pen, listening to the goats still bleating behind him. He waited until the noise eased, then stepped into the pen with a lantern. He counted. 1, 2, 3. He stopped. His breath caught. A goat was missing, not dead on the ground, not bleeding. Missing. Kamau's stomach turned hard. He counted again. Slower. Still missing. Mama Asha's voice shook beside him. "How?" Kamau looked toward the fence line. The thorn top wasn't crushed. The wire wasn't cut. There was no obvious breach. Then he saw it. A low corner where the fence met the ground, where the soil had eroded slightly after last week's brief rain. A gap, not big, not dramatic, but enough for a goat to squeeze through if pushed by panic. In the chaos of shouting and barking, one goat had slipped out. And out there, beyond the village edge, the dry river wall still existed. Even with the leopard in a cage, the corridor still offered darkness to whatever else waited. Hyenas, stray dogs, another leopard tomorrow. Nya stood at the trap, hearing the murmurs, and came over. She listened to Kamau explain, then nodded grimly. "This is why you count twice," she said. Kamau's voice was tight. "The leopard took one goat," he said. "Fear took another." Nya met his eyes. "Exactly," she said. "Predators don't just kill with teeth, they change behavior. They turn weak points into losses." Kamau looked out toward the black line of the riverbed and felt the anger drain into something heavier. Responsibility. "We fix the ground gap," he said. Nya nodded. "And we keep the barrier at the river access," she replied, "because this leopard won't be the last." Before dawn, the trapped leopard was loaded and driven away for relocation. People watched the truck leave as if the village's shadow had been carried off with it. But Kamau didn't feel safe. He felt aware. When the sun rose, he walked the pen perimeter with new eyes, pressing the earth down, reinforcing corners, tying thorn tighter, hanging more tin. He counted the goats again in daylight. He found the missing one 1/2 kilometer away near the riverbed, alive but scratched, trembling, caught in a thorn patch. He freed it and led it back, hand on its neck, feeling the animal's racing heart. 2 counts, 2 kinds of loss, and a lesson that the dry river wall kept teaching. Predators don't always take the most, they take what's easiest, and fear, once it enters a pen, creates its own openings.